Right when you are. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today is Wednesday, November the 6th. City Council meeting. We are streaming live on City Madison YouTube channel. We're also archiving so we can view it later. Like all of our meetings, we will invite you to join us in reciting the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on. Let's move to the roll call, please.
Sure. Patrick Tebenow.
Here.
Carla Krebs.
Here.
Lucy DeTillo.
Here.
Josh Schaefer.
Here.
Joel Storm.
Here.
Jim Bartlett is absent. Josh Wilbur.
Here.
Council, if you had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting, which was dated October 22nd, so we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. We'll move, I do not see any presentation of petitions or memorials, so we'll move straight into resolutions or bills. I'll turn it over to Joe for the resolution.
This is resolution number 2024-10C, and it's a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, transferring certain funds. And this is transferring funds from the City Tax Employee Insurance Fund to the Common Council Employee Insurance Fund and the Common Council Professional Fund.
Benny, do you want to scroll to that resolution, and then I think you're going to come to the podium and describe the purpose of the resolution and answering questions.
Good evening, Council. So this is the start of our year-end cleanup process. Clerk Treasurer and I have started meeting pretty much as soon as she got the budget input for next year. We started on this year's cleanup. So you're going to see some documents from Shirley that are concise and tidy and make a lot of sense. But these funds I went ahead and submitted to you because I need to get some things paid. So we're still working through that process for all of the funds, but wanted to go ahead and get these where they need to be. So just a quick explanation on this. If you'll remember, I think it was in 22, Reedy Financial had advised us to start moving some of the larger things and capital items out of our tax levy funded budgets and into county tax or places where we have other sources of revenue to not draw so much on the tax levy. So this was one of those for this year's budget. This money is for the mainly MPD and their benefits, Anthem benefits, and we moved as much as we could into county tax. That relieved over $300,000 from our tax levy, but I couldn't fit it all in there. So I left some in the county council budget where we used to pay all of their benefits. And then I submit that bill every month, and I actually forgot to start taking it out of the other one when I ran out of funds in the other. So part of this is moving that money that's still in county tax to cover that negative because I kept paying it out of the same place. And the difference is just what's left over out of that county tax allotment that we will not need for their benefits. And I would like to put that in county council's budget as well for professional fees. So that would take the difference. And then if we don't use it and don't need it for professional fees for the rest of the year, that'll revert to the general fund.
And Mindy, just to point out here, this isn't about increasing or decreasing the budget. It is just moving it from the right fund to the one fund to the right fund.
Right. I mean, it's been 17 months since we put that budget together, so it's hard to anticipate, especially on professional fees, how much you're going to need when we start new projects and things like that. So, yes, it doesn't increase the budget. The money's already been appropriated. We're just taking it from where it is and putting it where we need it.
Do we foresee any issues needing the money back for the county tax employee insurance, or we're pretty squared away on that?
No, I've already paid. I only have one more bill to pay for the year for that, and I have enough money in employee insurance throughout the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you expect any specific professional fees before the end of the year?
So I can give you some examples of some of the things that we have paid and why I would like a little more. One is on our technology side. So I had money in the technology budget, but we have had new staff come in that we've bought laptops for. We had to replace some of our hardware equipment that was just old and didn't work with the newer systems that we needed to move to. MetroNet has upgraded everything for us and our phones. So some of that technology dollar went to that new equipment. So their bills are, we have a contract with them. So that would be part of it. I would need to continue to service their contract. Another example would be the sidewalk ADA Title VI plan that we hired HWC to complete for us. They are redoing all of our sidewalk ratings, walking around and updating those just like our Pacers get updated. They are updating my ADA and Title VI plan that's required by the state, and it's a pretty massive document. So we hired them to do that. That was a contract not to exceed $38,000. So that would be paid out of there. Those types of things. Thank you.
If we could, maybe get a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution number 2024-10C.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from the council? Yes, and this is sponsored by Josh Wilbur. Is there any questions or from the audience? Okay. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Patrick Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Carla Krebs,
Yes.
Lucy DeTillo,
Yes.
Josh Hafer,
Yes.
Joel Storm,
Yes.
and Josh Wilbur.
Yes.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, council. Thank you, Mindy.
The next ordinance is sponsored by Councilwoman Krebs and is ordinance number 2024-14. It is an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, repealing and replacing the City of Madison Code Chapter 54 Stormwater Regulations and Chapter 55 Post-Construction Stormwater Regulations. And this again just replaces an existing ordinance to comply with the new IDEM MS4 general permit requirements, establishes new stormwater quality and quantity best practices, and compliance procedures.
I'd like to give a quick overview and then turn it over to Nicole. Council, we have been talking about stormwater management, and then also the problems with lacking infrastructure for quite a few years. So we've been investing a lot of time and resources on some strategic planning in a number of fronts. What tonight's ordinance does is it replaces the existing ordinances, as Joe had mentioned, to comply with the new IDEM MS4 general permit requirements, and it establishes stormwater quality and quantity best practices and compliance procedures. This is an ordinance that is replacing ordinances that were adopted in 2006 and 2007. So best practices, as well as the federal and state regulations have changed relative to Madison's MS4 operations. But this is a bigger part of trying to address a frequent problem throughout our community on the root causes of that. A lot of that is essentially unchanneled or undetained, retained stormwater that's flowing into our watersheds and then causing flooding problems. We started addressing that through our economic development strategies on the hilltop, where we combined about 80 acres of commercial development from around 50 to 75 years ago into some stormwater detention. And then we moved, in addition to working with OHM, who representatives are here tonight, Nicole's going to address, we're also doing strategic planning on our stormwater master plan. And that is evaluating and mapping all of our current infrastructure and assessing the condition of it, but also taking the data from our engagement with the Army Corps of Engineers and using all of that data and science to really bring some solutions to mitigate future flash flooding in the Crooked Creek watershed. But the strategies we're evaluating, the data we're collecting, affects the city as a whole. And this is a common problem. I'm sure each of you have been contacted by a resident with a water concern, a standing water concern, most of which was created, when that was developed back in the 50s and 60s. So we're trying to put the genie back in the bottle to a certain extent, but also have better regulations and management going forward that addresses the development standards, the stormwater planning, management planning for development and subdivisions. This does not impact any individual property owner who has existing property, for example, unless they're doing something that disturbs a large amount of land that's described here. So this is part of an ongoing effort where we've invested significant resources to address a chronic problem that's been happening for decades across our community. With that overview, I'll turn it over to Nicole and she can talk about this stormwater management ordinance.
Yeah, so to give some additional background, so in 2021, IDEM redid their regulations on stormwater and told all the MS4 communities that they had to pass a new ordinance to meet their standards. That was supposed to be done by April of 2024. However, they kept changing what exactly they wanted to see in the ordinance. So they gave all the communities an extension to get the ordinance passed. So we hired OHM, who has done our stormwater consultant in the past, to help us update our ordinance. We hired them in October 23, and so we're wrapping up a year-long process of getting this ordinance where IDEM would accept it, but also where it would work for our community. So it's a long, big document. You're combining two ordinances currently into one document to make it easier for the development public, so they can go to one location instead of have to sort through two. But the previous ordinances were passed in 2006 and 2007. So it's been a while and they're in desperate need of update. But I'm going to let OHM, our consultants who really know the nitty-gritty of the ordinance, come up and present it to you. You should have received a summary, which is in your packets, of the different ordinance sections, because it really is a repeal and replace, not just an update of those two ordinances.
And you want to scroll to the outline. And in case you did this, I will just make the point that if you looked at our 2006 and 2007 ordinances, it was just a few pages. And you can see now with how much the regulation and best practices has changed over that almost 20-year period, with a lot more regulation and a lot more planning to address stormwater runoff. I know Steve's here from OHM, and Mindy, did you see that? It looks like it's a green.
First of all, thank you for the summary, because we got our packet on Friday, and it's kind of hard in 4 days to get through 20-some pages.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And thank you for making it easy for even a person who knows nothing about stormwater to understand.
Yeah, that's the intent. Good evening. My name is Steve Emily with OHM Advisors. I'm an engineer out of our Jeffersonville office. And as Nicole said, we've been providing some engineering support to Madison for several years regarding general MS4 compliance and stormwater support. And I've been working for several months on this new ordinance. I can't really sum it up any better than the mayor already has. This ordinance is a requirement of this new permit from December of 2021. We're a little bit late getting it in front of you for approval and consideration. But fundamentally, it's just it's a requirement of the permit. It covers several factors, including illicit discharges, how the city will manage stormwater quality and quantity issues in the future. A couple of things that are probably worth mentioning. Elected officials in particular usually get a lot of feedback on changes in fee structures. If you would look on page 29, there's a set of enforcement fines that are new and didn't exist in previous ordinances, and also a set of fees for plan review at work that the city has to pay for on page 21, 22. You may hear feedback about that. If you look at the fee structure from the 2007 ordinance, I mean, they're just woefully inadequate to cover any of your expenses. So most communities want to try to at least cover this is an unfunded mandate, obviously, by the government. So as much as you can cover the expenses of operating and managing the program with fees, most communities try to do that. So you might pay special attention to those, just because that's where a lot of people, if you're going to hear complaints, that may be what it's related to. I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging into the details of the ordinance, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about any specifics here tonight.
You mentioned the due date was originally in April, but it's been moved back. What is the date now?
We got a formal extension from IDEM until the end of September, and we're working with them really on a community by community basis, keeping them updated on what the status of the ordinance progression to the city councils is.
So essentially, we are at this point past the deadline, but IDEM's not pressing it.
Sure.
We had a meeting with IDEM last week. They came down and did an audit, and aware that we're working on this, and we said that we were going to try to have it passed by the end of the year, and they were acceptable of that.
Okay, so end of the year is our deadline.
Yeah, and I want to mention too is that, you might recall that, you know, our MS4 supervision used to originate out of utilities, and we had some turnover in utilities, and then, in my opinion, it wasn't getting the oversight that it needed, because this is a really, really important thing for the community to stay focused on, which is why we moved it into Nicole's group and working with Dewey and created essentially an MS4 department. There are some significant fines and so forth that the city could be assessed if we are not properly supervising these Clean Water Act and IDEM regulations. I also want to point out too that if you read anything, and I know you'll read the entire ordinance like we've done several times, but on page 2 of the appendix, paragraph C, which are the findings, I think that this, and Steve, correct me if you want to add anything, feel free, this section does a really, really good job of explaining the importance of this and what it affects. And it really is about managing land disturbances that may cause some pollution or contamination to the stormwater quality as well as the stormwater quantity on the discharge side.
Oh, right up to, you said of the
So,
appendix.
the appendix is attached to the ordinance,
At least the findings. Okay.
and I was referring to page 2,
Yeah.
which has the findings in it that I think do a really good job of summarizing why this is important ordinance.
You mentioned page 29 had the fees, or that's really the fines for non-compliance, right? Is there a permitting fee structure in here
Yeah,
as
the
well?
permitting fee is on page 22.
22, okay. There it is.
And obviously, this fee structure was developed with Nicole and Dewey's help, so we didn't make any of this up.
Well, while we're going to answer your question, mention SWAC for a little bit, because that's an organization that I think has also been allowing us to collaborate regionally on the same problem.
Yeah, so the Southern Indiana Stormwater Advisory Committee has been in existence for probably going on 20 years now. OHM is currently kind of the clearinghouse for 9 SWAC communities. So we collectively provide regulatory compliance and assistance related to MS4 compliance to several communities in Southern Indiana, including Madison. And really what that allows you to do is to share the costs in developing some of these common platforms that we're presenting to you. So when we send out billing for our services, we can really take these programs and pieces that are common to all the communities and share those implementation costs across across those communities. So there's really an overall efficiency in terms of how we're able to provide some of these services.
On the ordinance states that anything over 1 acre of disturbance is, other than some exceptions, falls under this ordinance. But then I also saw where 10,000 square feet to a quarter acre. So how does it still covers those smaller plots?
There's actually an error on the second page of this little overview we put to you. That 10,000 square foot is not in the ordinance.
Okay.
So this is from a previous one that wasn't cleaned up properly. So yeah, it's not in
So
the
the
ordinance.
10,000 square foot stuff can be ignored. It's all
Correct.
1 acre and above.
Yeah, I should have.
It's properly identified in the summary, but it's not in the ordinance, correctly not in the ordinance.
And then the stormwater system that Madison operates, or do we have a map of that anywhere? Does that exist?
It does. Actually, we provided a.
Yes, our office maintains that. It's through our GIS, and we actually have another consulting firm going through and looking at it for its accuracy and adding to what's not currently mapped.
It's not on the Jefferson County GIS, or?
No, it's only accessible by staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get a PDF or anything of that?
Probably, but it's
It's the entire.
it's massive, yeah, and
It's massive.
it's not clear. That's why we're having them. Basically, we've asked them to redo it because the last real big update was when it was done in probably 2007 as part of the original ordinance, and it was done by engineering interns. So we're not 100% sure
Well,
on
and the
its
mapping-
accuracy.
The mapping is all of our infrastructure, so it's pipes and inlets and outlets and grates and culverts and gutters, and it's enormous. So the GIS would allow us to go there and look at all the underground utilities and stormwater, for example. So that's good when a developer's coming in, or we're communicating with the public on where that infrastructure is and what is ours. That's another purpose of this ordinance, is to create some clarity that we've been talking about, is what is the homeowners, property owners, and what is the cities? And, kind of dispelling, I think, the myth that when water rains and falls on the earth, it's not the city of Madison's water, it's all of our water. And when it's in our channel, it's our responsibility. When it's on your property, it's your responsibility. So there is a section in here about private property owner responsibilities. And we've had multiple questions come up, which is, I have water standing in my yard, or I have a ditch that goes through my yard. What are you going to do about it? Well, if it's on private property and not in a drainage easement or a drainage right-of-way, it's not city's drainage. It's the property owner. So there is some clarity also in here about that.
Do we have a plan in place for if they needed to move that water from their yard? Ostensibly, eventually it's gonna get to the city. Do we have any kind of way for
Wait,
this?
Sorry, Councilman.
Yeah.
There we go.
Do we have any kind of way for the homeowners to move that water? Or any recommendations?
I'll ask our experts here.
Well, it's generally the homeowner's responsibility to make sure that they can direct the water from their private property to a public outlet. So, for instance, if you got an easement and a ditch in the rear of your home, it's your responsibility to drain your gutters in your yard to that rear facility or to the front gutter, for instance, if that's the outlet. But really, the city's responsibility is to provide a public outlet. It's the owner's responsibility to get their private drainage to that public outlet.
So owners shouldn't be impeded by reasonably moving that water to a public outlet?
Homeowners shouldn't be impeded by it? No.
Okay,
Not unless they're causing harm to an adjacent neighbor, for instance.
sure. Okay, thank you.
I've not had a chance to totally review this yet, but just so I'm to clarify, these fees, the stormwater fees, these would only apply to construction plans on 1 acre or more, so not, if somebody downtown just splits a residential parcel into two, they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it's just for anything that disturbs land over an acre.
Okay, thank you.
What are the implications? Obviously, new construction's the primary target of this, right? But what about existing structures or things that weren't properly planned for stormwater? Is it all grandfathered in at this point, and until it gets touched?
Yes, it's all grandfathered in at this point, but the ordinance and the permit does cover development and redevelopment. So if an existing developed property is redeveloped, they would have to comply with all these same requirements.
But an existing property that doesn't have proper drainage or something like that, it's not gonna have to go back and make changes at this time.
No.
Is there anything else from the council? Okay. Hearing nothing else, that will move on to the second reading at the next meeting.
We do allow public comment on.
Oh, that's
this
right.
if,
Gotta get used to that.
Procedure, so if you want to ask.
Is there anything from the public on the stormwater drainage? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next ordinance,
Down, Tom. Yeah, we're ready for Tom.
oh, okay, we're gonna call Tom.
We're calling, our bond counsel, so he can participate in the next ordinance discussion if necessary.
Hi, Tom, it's Mindy McGee. You are online with the city council.
Hello, Tom, thanks. The next ordinance up is the 2024-15, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for the purpose of providing funds to pay for various capital projects and incidental expenses in connection therewith, and on account of the issuance of bonds appropriating the proceeds thereof and all matters related thereto. And this is with regard to implementing capital funding strategies for the improvements adopted in the 2025 budgets, and it's it's a bond for $1,750,000, and it's mainly for Main Street repairs.
Yeah, I'll mention Councilman Tevenall is the sponsor, and it is for the capital projects for the Main Street corridor, as we've discussed through our budgeting process, as well as the Main Street master plan that we've outlined and talked about quite a bit. This is the financing element for a portion of the costs associated with that $20+ million capital investment. And it's, as it's described here, it would authorize the city to issue a general obligation bond in the amount not to exceed $1,750,000 for a term no greater than 10 years at an interest rate of no greater than 6%. The process this would follow, and we'll get to, if there's any question for Tom, he can answer it, but the process would be to introduce this tonight, have a second reading and adoption at the meeting on November 19th, and then after the November 19th, a term sheet would be issued to local financial institutions soliciting their interest in purchasing the bonds and closing on the bonds no later than December the 19th. Council, we've done this a couple of times. You're probably familiar with this process, but this is to create additional sources for our matching portion of the Main Street corridor investment costs. So Tom's here. Tom, if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free to do so now.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think that sums it up pretty well.
Okay.
So are there any questions for Tom or the mayor or myself with regard to this ordinance from the council? Okay. Seeing none, is there any questions from the audience with regard to this ordinance for the council or the mayor's office? All right, seeing none, thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
I do
Bye.
have one question.
Oh, hold on.
You have a question?
Wait, Tom.
Yeah.
Just, did we decide on 7-year or 10-year term?
It's 10 years.
10-year?
Yes.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
The term, we informed the councilman that we are doing 10-year term on it.
Yes, through January 15th of 2035. Yes, yes.
Anything else? I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay, seeing nothing else, this will move on to second
Okay, thank
reading
you all.
Good
Good
and
night.
vote
Bye.
at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, council. Moving on, are there any reports or recommendations or other business from the standing or select committees of the city council? See none, I invite Madison Police Chief Sean Scudder to give council and the mayor and the public a report.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Chief.
So I want to start with kind of a year-end review for MPD. I gave you guys what I've got in front of me. So the biggest thing that we've been working on throughout this year is kind of trying to shift the culture of MPD, which has been tough. But we're getting there. We're working closely with our captains. We're setting goals for them. We've done performance reviews on the captains, which is something that hasn't been done in years or ever, as far as I know, which seems to be pretty well received. They were able to set goals for themselves, and we set goals for them as well. So the captains are in turn setting goals for their patrol officers to achieve certain things out here. So again, we're just trying to transition from the MPD where there wasn't a lot of accountability to where we're holding them to a higher standard and trying to get better results from them. So one thing we've worked on pretty hard is improving communication throughout the community, not just the law enforcement community, but I touch on BLF and their Bethany Legacy Foundation. I've been in a lot of meetings with them this year as they try to work through addressing mental health concerns in the community. So the mayor and I sat through a workshop last week. I've been in numerous meetings with them, just kind of a think tank type meetings where we strategize and try to come up with ideas for new initiatives within the community. We've got Community Watch. It was a slow start. We're still working on it. But it is something we got up and running throughout the city, and we're going to continue to work towards improving that. We are in the process of implementing Lexapol, which is a policy and procedure management system. Currently our policies are kept on a PDF. They're kind of hard to access. They don't get updated a lot. They don't stay on track with current best practices, state law changes, so we're always kind of behind on those. Lexapol is going to manage that for us, and they have a team that tracks things through legislature, through the Law Enforcement Training Board, and they push down those changes to us. We take up to the Board of Public Works and get it approved, and the officers have quick and easy access through their portal. Also with Lexapol, there's a training portal, so officers will receive training however often we set that to push out, whether it's once a day or once a week or once a month. They can access training. Feel free to stop me. I feel like I'm going really fast. They push trainings out for the officers on different topics, including our policies and our procedures. So it just ensures that they're familiar with all those.
Is Lexapol something you have that has not been used in the past?
We have never contracted with Lexapol, but they're kind of the nationwide standard. A lot of law enforcement agencies throughout Indiana and the United States use Lexapol. So they're very well versed. They're on Indiana's policies, procedures, case law that comes down. So they track all of that, and they will push out updates and make recommendations for changes to our policies and procedures.
Do you guys have a contract with him for a certain length?
We're getting ready to sign contract. We got approval through BPWS Monday, and we're getting ready to sign the contract, and then we'll start the process. So what they do initially is they take our 50 highest priority policies, highest liability policies like use of force, pursuits. They pick those apart and go through those and revamp them, and then push those back to us. And then the remaining policies are stuff that's not high liability, like how our uniforms are configured. That stuff we'll take care of putting into their system. So.
Do you guys have and I know it's early on with this, do you kind of have a method in place to track the effectiveness? You know, how are you going to measure the effect of this program?
don't have anything currently in place.
Okay.
No.
Okay. The Lexapol platform is about risk management. So the strategy, the overall strategy there is, the chief, I think, did a great job of explaining is, we've been tracking our standard operating procedures, chief's directives, rules and regulations very manually through a Word document, and as he indicated, only periodically does it get reviewed to see if it still complies with best practices in law enforcement and community policing nationally. And that's a weakness for us, because every engagement they have across the community is risk for the city, candidly. And one lawsuit, because of not doing something correctly or consistent with best practices, could mean hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in liability that then creates our cost because of having to insure each of these officers. It could also, create some liability for all of us. So we see this as a risk management tool that starts updating these best practices, and there's also a training module. Chief's going to go into that'll allow us to train more frequently. And then the master plan is, from an operational perspective, and Jeff is here, is to take that resource and also the time that it gives us back from a policy perspective and start implementing that into measurable outcomes that we want the police department to achieve as a whole with regard to its engagement across the community. So there's a big picture here that this is one part of, but the result is to get with what you just outlined, which is how are we going to measure the result of that? The result is reducing our risk and not being liable, when we get sued, and it happens all the time. And then the second one is deploying our resources so that we do have greater outcomes on our primary initiatives across the city from a public safety perspective. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, and I understand it's early phases. This is merely out of curiosity.
Yeah.
There are some instant effects that you described and you talked about. So
Yeah, the biggest thing is the risk management and just mitigating liability. So if we're tracking on all of our policies and making sure they're up to date, I think it's going to be very beneficial.
definitely. Thank you.
We're going to take delivery first of the year with Axon body cams. I think we talked about this in budget workshops. Axon body cams are, again, they're kind of the nationwide standard for body cams. Most departments, when they go with new body cams, they're going with Axon. They seem to work really well. The ones that we have currently fail a lot. The failure rate on them is very high. Axon comes with a good warranty. And then also the biggest part with Axon is evidence.com, which is the management system that goes along with it. It's a kind of a force multiplier. I outlined that there because officers currently, when they have to deal with body cam, they have to go to the station, dock the body cam, go in there, manually go through things, put it on a flash drive, get it to the prosecutor's office. With this, the prosecutor's office is going to be able to access the portal, go in there, retrieve anything that they need. We'll be kind of hands off with it at that point, so we just dock the body cam, it's there, it'll attach the case number to it. It's already got retention links set in there for body cam. We don't have to go back in and filter through things, and they can access it remotely from over there. So it's just going to take a lot of time, or give a lot of time back to the officers. So
The current body cams, do they have to be docked at the end of every shift, or only after a
end of every
encounter?
shift? Yes.
So, and that's going to be true with the Axons as well.
Yes. Yep.
But it sounds like there's if I understand correctly, with the new cameras, are they server based? So like the information that is recorded on that camera can move directly to a server that can be viewed?
Axon is all cloud based.
Okay.
What we have now is server based, which is housed at MPD, and that's issues we've ran into in the past is we've lost servers, which in turn we lose body cam. So this is all cloud based, and it'll be there for as long as we want it to be there.
It automates the process a lot more.
100%. It's going to be so much more fluid and easier to manage. We're also in the process of getting tough books. They're a rugged laptops for the officers in their cars. We currently use subpar laptops, just cheap, what you get off Amazon. They're not built for the conditions. The hinges break on them, they vibrate apart, they're not made for the temperature fluctuations. So we're gonna make that switch. They're a little more expensive, but I think long-term, we're gonna save money by not having to replace them as often. And then officers aren't gonna be getting as frustrated with their equipment as well.
So do you have or will you have a scheduled replacement for those, or?
We never have had a scheduled replacement before. It's just when they fail is when we replace them, but that's something we want to put in as a schedule, that we cycle these things out. And this is my first go with any type of a rugged computer, so I don't know what the life expectancy. They tell us it's 5 years. I don't know if it's really going to be 5 years. So we, I think we're just gonna have to dip our feet in the water and get a feel if it's really 3 years or 4 years. But yes, get on a cycle where we replace those every so often.
I can vouch for the tough books a little bit too, and they're pretty sturdy.
Yeah.
Like we would bring them out in the desert and in Humvees and stuff, and they lasted several years, so
Yeah.
they're good.
Good. We recently obtained cell phones for all the officers. That was something we had never done in the past. We'd always given them a stipend every month to apply towards their personal cell phone bill. There's just a lot of issues with that. One of the biggest one is, if an officer leaves, moves to another agency, or leaves law enforcement, they take everything on that phone, whether it's photographs of a crime scene, audio recordings, video recordings. Now we'll have access to all of that information. So if something happens, we'll be able to get access to it. And then also there's not opening them up for their phones ever being subpoenaed into court for any kind of reason. I've never seen that happen, but I think it's a possibility. Joe doesn't agree with me. If you guys haven't seen our new white SUVs parked down past the police station, we're switching to something a little more visible and hopefully approachable by the public. We're working on some redesigns for the decals on the side, so hopefully we'll get those pushed out to the officers here soon, and you'll see those out in town. So, I've also got some stats here if you guys want to listen to this some more. I compared January to November of 23, and then also the same time frame for 2024. Traffic details, which can encompass a wide variety of things, but normally it's officers setting up doing like radar enforcement or something of that type. We had 38 instances of that in 23 and moved it up to 86 this year. Consensual encounters, that's when an officer sees somebody out in the public that they may find suspicious for whatever reason, and it's usually a self-initiated thing. They'll get out of their car, they'll approach the guy or gal and just strike up a conversation. Hey, who are you? What are you doing? What's going on? And you can see those went from 92 up to 197, so I feel like we're seeing an improvement with officers getting out of the cars and interacting with the public.
Chief, for all of these, how much of it is changes or improvements in documentation and reporting?
That, I was going to get to that.
Okay.
Some of it. The traffic details, the consensual encounters, event coverage, I think have always been documented pretty well. Extra patrols and security checks, which you see a big jump in those. Some of that is going to be attributed to they're actually doing it more because it's something that we've encouraged internally for these officers to get out and do. And then a lot of it is documenting it. They're actually logging that in.
Have you noticed any correlation between some of the data points? For example, do you find anything tracking with the security checks, right? So,
yeah, if you go on down to results, so I've got breaking and enterings as a category, businesses, residences, vehicles, you'll see those were almost cut in half. And I really believe that can be attributed to the increase in security checks and extra patrols. Suspicious people has also decreased. I believe that's, again, correlated to the fact that our officers are out here more. Stolen vehicles dropped a little, and these are just some, I just pulled a few categories. I can get you more.
On stolen vehicles, how much of that is your TV grand theft type of stuff versus somebody taking their dad's vehicle out and they shouldn't have, or their girlfriend's vehicle? Or...
Normally, it's results from somebody leaving their keys in their car. and going inside because.
So
for
these
whatever
aren't more
reason.
actual vehicle theft, not
And they're
spurned
normally
family
crimes
members.
of opportunity. We don't
Yeah.
see them too often where the car's stolen and it's never seen again, like it's going to a chop shop.
Joyride.
Normally it's stolen on the west end and it ends up abandoned on the east end when they get to where they're going.
Free taxi.
So it's just a crime of, what's that?
Just a free taxi.
A free taxi, yeah. So we run into that a lot. It'll get stolen in one area of town and it's parked, we'll find it a week later parked on the hilltop or something. So some stuff we want to work on going into 2025. I want to hone in more on developing our officers and preparing for the next generation of leaders. So we want to work on getting these guys into leadership development courses, work on our field officer training program, so we can develop more well-rounded officers. There's certain things that are taught in that program, and some things just don't get touched on a lot. So we're going to get eyes on that whole program and make sure that they're teaching these young new officers everything that they need to know. I want to work on building a new training facility for MPD. There's big changes coming down from the Law Enforcement Training Board on stuff that we have to train on. Traditionally, we had to get 24 hours of training every year in a few certain categories. Our psychomotor skills, which would be firearms, defensive tactics, and driving, was a 2-hour mandate every year. Defensive tactics was the first one that they attacked. We now have to get 4 hours a year, but we also have certain topics that we have to cover, such as handcuffing techniques, takedown procedures. They never gave us guidelines before. It was just, it could be hands-on training, it could be classroom training. So they've revamped that and put more requirements on us, and they're getting ready to also do the other psychomotor skills and then add in other mandates that aren't psychomotor skills. So we're going to devote a lot more time and attention to our training. So given that, once we get our staffing levels where we want to be, we want to implement a full-time training coordinator. Because the officer that does it now is also a patrol officer, and he spends a lot of his time's dedicated to getting our training pushed out, scheduled, and implemented. So we also want to look at a training facility. We currently use the room in our office. It's like a multi-purpose. We do meetings, we do training, and it's just not big enough. So we want to look at a new facility, if we can find money, and develop that into a training facility. And it'll also allow us to host outside trainings. We can post, hey, we're doing this type of training. Officers from other agencies will come in and take that training with us. And I believe that's going to have a lot of benefits, like recruitment.
So classroom and field training is intended for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Does that include new shooting range type of thing? I know the county's been pushing for that.
I would love to get a new shooting range. I think money is going to be the biggest obstacle. We can find locations, and I think that's what the county realized. They had a big push to put in a new shooting range, an outdoor shooting range, and then they discovered all the cost associated with it, designing, the architecture, drainage. There's just a lot of stuff that goes into designing a shooting range that's up to code and standard. So it wasn't just pushing dirt into a pile. There's a lot of stuff involved.
Is there any opportunities for the city and county to work together on some kind of training facility that includes the shooting range down the road?
I would love to.
Is that something
I would definitely be interested in talking with the sheriff's department about that. So we're going to focus going into the new year on recruitment and retention. We're getting ready to do another hiring, a round of hiring. So that's something that we've struggled with, is recruiting. We don't get a lot of applicants anymore. You talk to the guys that were hired 20 or 30 years ago, and there'd be 200 people apply. And now we're lucky if we get 12 to 15. And I think that's just the nature of law enforcement across the country. They're just struggling to find good applicants. So we're going to have to step up our recruitment practices.
Sean, are you trying to get into the high school? Like, I think you and I talked about that, trying to get into the high school
Yes, I've
Try to
reached out to
recruit.
the schools. Ivy Tech, I reached out to them recently to try to get up there to, even if, just career fairs or just to talk to students that are like in the criminal justice program. I plan to reach out to the Career Center in Versailles. They have a criminal justice program.
Okay.
Those are generally high school kids, but if we can connect with them now,
Right.
build that relationship and get them in a few years, I think it would be worth our time.
Yeah, good deal.
Data collection, the mayor's just gonna love it. We're working on getting more data. That's what I spent all afternoon, was on the phone with the company that manages our case report system. Jeff got him on the phone. We talked, working on building out some reports. It's gonna take some time, but I hope by the beginning of the year, we can give you all some actual reports that show you crime trends and high crime areas throughout the city.
That's the important, you mentioned the data collection, but the analysis and how do you use that data?
Analysis, yes. I guess that would be a better word.
Do you guys have any concept for like a blue force tracker? Do you guys currently use one?
No.
It
I'm not
allocates
familiar.
getting back into the tough books and stuff. I know we utilize a program, but essentially it's just blue dots, right, on your screen of your map chip that kind of show the allocation of forces. And it can record that, so if you ever needed to allocate forces, you can make those quick decisions and kind of see where your men are.
Yes, that is something that has been discussed, tracking locations of our officers, and I think it would also be beneficial for dispatch if they could see those. If they have an incident that occurs right here and there's an officer sitting there, they can dispatch that officer straight to that instead of trying to figure out who's closest or just dispatching the District 1 officer or, whoever's covering the downtown area. So that is something we're looking into and trying to work through how that's going to work.
Okay.
Dispatch currently doesn't have mapping abilities. That was another thing that we were talking on the phone with our case management system about, is implementing mapping systems so we can pull up stuff like that.
Okay.
We plan to increase community engagement through foot patrols, bike patrols, and attending special events. I think that's something that we've seen a little more of this year, the foot patrols, but it's something that we still have a lot of room for improvement. As I was pulling the numbers that we went over earlier, I was looking at accidents because I was very hopeful that we were going to see a decrease in accidents due to the extra patrols that are taking place, but there wasn't a decrease from 2023 to 2024. It stayed even right about 500. So we're going to work on visibility and enforcement in the high traffic areas or the traditional speeding areas, try to decrease the amount of accidents that we have.
What mechanism of reporting does the police force have to get back to, say, Mindy or the mayor about, these are the areas where we have the accidents, this is where maybe we don't have good enough crosswalks or we need better lighting or something like that? Is there any?
We have nothing currently. That's what we're working on, so we can get that information. And we should be able to filter through it and determine, once we get the mapping in place, where, I can pull up how many accidents we've had, what day of the week, what time, but because we don't have the mapping implemented, we could filter through all 500 accidents and put dots on a map, but I don't have time.
Very time consuming.
Yeah, there are interesting programs, and maybe I can talk offline that we've used before to turn that data into analytics, where you can actually, the report is channeled, they're located, it's housed with that, and for example, if you wanted to see certain crime areas, now your dots are popping up. Now you can see if there's a specific region or time frame.
I would be interested in a third party, but I think if we can get them to turn the switch on in our program that we already have, it's going to show us all that information.
Certainly.
It's just, we need to coordinate with dispatch and the sheriff's department because we're in a contract with them for this case management system and get everybody on board to turn it on.
So you think we have the tools, we just need to implement them, maybe educate?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep. I've got noise ordinance listed there. We obviously already have a noise ordinance, but that is something that we drastically need to improve. the enforcement of.
Can you hear the downtown people cheering right now? I can hear them. Okay.
Yeah. So, foot patrols, I already touched on it. We want to increase those going into next year. I think it's very important. I think the people of downtown especially find it, they really enjoy when they see the officers walking around in their community. So that's something we're going to hone in and set goals for the patrol officers to do more of. And then something we've been talking about is a Citizens Academy, which would look like maybe one night a week over several weeks where interested people come in and we walk them through kind of what our job is and what we do. I think it would give the community a better feel for what we're doing and how we do things and why we do things. So.
Sean, I will tell you that, I've seen, more visibility of the police force downtown on the hilltop, so, and I think it's kind of amazing because you've been down in officers too, and I'm still seeing more visibility, with them out there. I think the events, I've definitely seen, an uptick in them stationed in different places during events, which, more presence leads to less issues going on, or, definitely, out of towners, at least stop and ask the officer maybe something that they wanted to do. So I think that's great. The only event I would say that I wish we could have more, but I know it would be very difficult, on Halloween. This year especially, there was such a large crowd. And
it threw a kink in my plans switching the days this year. I had several officers scheduled for the 31st.
Yeah.
But not on the 30th, and then we were able to get pull another one or two in on the 30th, and made sure we had enough coverage. I just didn't have enough people out in the neighborhoods handing candy out like I wanted.
Yeah, no, but again, I don't want that to be a negative. Just it's tough to do, but I appreciate what your team is doing because it's definitely noticeable. So I wanted to make sure I told you that.
Appreciate it.
One area I think there's been a lot of public chatter about lately is Clifty Drive with the lane reduction and people driving in the wrong lane. What are you able to do, or have you been doing to try to help?
Yeah, I've directed them up there on numerous occasions. I think they are present. It's just unfortunately, a lot of times when there's heavy traffic, it also correlates with heavy call volume, so they're getting pulled away and dealing with other things. So they're there. They're just maybe not at the most visible times. So hopefully once we get staffed, get a couple more people hired, you'll see a bigger presence up there. So, but I do recognize that that's an issue.
Sometimes an empty car just parked somewhere is a good deterrent too. I've seen you guys do that a few times. It's nice.
Yeah, we did it this past weekend down at Mad Hop. We parked a car down there just to try to have a little bit of a presence, extra presence. Okay, that's all I got. If you guys, do you have something?
No, I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you put in this year. I've been really impressed with. Sorry, I'm not contagious. I just can't get rid of this cough. Been really impressed with how you've handled taking over the department and the changes you've put in place, and I think it's going to pay dividends long term for our police department.
I believe so too. I appreciate it. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. I'm not sure, Council, you've had an opportunity to meet our new Director of Streets and Facilities and Solid Waste. Chris, have you been here before?
Not City Council.
All right. Been not here. It's my honor to introduce Chris Hale.
All right, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself to the council. I started in September, and I'm excited to be a part of the city. One of the biggest recent projects that the department has completed that you're all well aware of probably is the rollout of the trash cans. So we did roll out approximately 5,000 tipper cans to the community. That's been very successful thanks to the work of Gina and the previous streets director, Tony Sorrells. They put a lot of effort into getting that prepared, and I luckily came in on the back end and was able to just see it through. So we've seen a lot of feedback from the community, a lot of people interested in the trash cans and the purpose of them. You know, it's not only been a tremendous safety and ergonomic improvement for the actual TSO workers, but it's also helping to make our city more clean and beautiful, right, and more organized trash pickup. So you'll see those guys out with the tippers now. There are a couple things, reminders for the public that we would ask is that please do not place loose trash in the cans. All your trash should be bagged. We ask that you not place bags on or on top of the cans or on the ground. Or also, please don't place bags in the city cans along Main Street or Vaughn Drive. We ask, you know, those are not for private residence use. And then we also ask that you please do not paint or mark your cans. The cans are serialized, so we're able to identify them. That's molded into the can itself, so that's not going to go away. No one's going to be able to take that off there. So we can help you identify your can if there's an issue. And then lastly, we ask that you put the handle that you actually roll the can with out towards the road. So that makes it easier for the guys to then roll it to the tipper, since the truck itself is not actually picking it up along the side of the road. If you leave that handle out for them, they can roll it easier to the truck and get it dumped for you.
On the trash
Yeah.
cans, have we seen an impact, positive or negative, to the time it takes to complete a route with the tippers?
Yeah, so as they're working through it, it is taking them slightly longer to complete the routes. The tipper takes, so before, when they just had one bag in a can, they would reach in and just toss that bag in. The tipper takes about 9 seconds to operate from the time that you put it up to the tipper itself and tell it to go and stop. So we have worked through that. At the beginning, we were a little slow coming up behind that with the compost. That has improved, so we expect to continue to see improvement, and we believe we'll still be able to manage the routes on the 4 days, Monday through Thursday, which is important for us because of a week with a holiday that allows us the flexibility to still get everybody's trash picked up.
And we still currently have 2 riders per truck?
Yes, so we still currently have 2 riders per truck. We are working to try, the overall goal was to try and reduce that down to the 1 rider. So we'll continue to work through that part and try and see the full gains of the cans.
And do we have very many issues? I've driven around, I see a few orange tags where people have tried to put out old non-tipper cans and things like that. Are we having any substantial problem with that, or?
I would say it is substantial, but we are trying to go through and reinforce that. So you will see a lot of orange tags. If people get an orange tag that they don't understand, we ask them to call into the street department. We're happy to work through that with them. But we are directing that any loose trash bags that are left on the side, that those are tagged to try and form better habits as a city when it comes to trash pickup. You know, when those bags sit out, animals can get into them, the wind can blow them, those kind of things. So we're trying to really confine all the trash to the cans.
You want to talk about the routes a little bit? You are looking at,
Yeah, so we're
balancing the routes.
gathering data on all the current routes, the number of pickups per route, and we'll be looking at possibly balancing those routes a little better in order to help increase the efficiency that you were talking about.
Do we know when the last time the routes were changed?
So
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
it seems like it's been at least 10 years.
The TSO itself has been operating just like it did in 1985. I don't know when the routes had actually changed.
So I'm new, so I don't have that exact date, but
Yeah.
it's been quite a while, and there are definitely areas, opportunities for improvement there, right? Understanding how many stops are on each route, how were the routes planned, is there opportunity to run the routes in a more efficient manner? So there are a lot of tools available now that were not available in 1985 that we'll be looking to implement as we go forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely encouraged optimizing those, but if or when that happens, plan for really good public communication, because that will be.
Yes, I learned very quickly how important a change in the trash pickup or just the routine for the trash is.
Yeah,
so I do recognize
it'll take people years to get used to the new routes.
Yeah, yes, so we will make sure we're very cautious in implementing any changes there. So, I did bring some brief Q3 numbers. I don't have as many fancy numbers as the chief did, but I had a few numbers here. So in Q3 at the TSO, we were open for 77 days of operation. We took in approximately 2,800 tons of trash, just over 800 tons of construction debris, 130 tons of recycling that was picked up along the routes and brought to the TSO itself, and 16 tons of metal, for a grand total of 3,777 tons in Q3 alone. So I think being new here, that's something I've learned is the large amount of trash that moves through the TSO along with the other debris. We recently had our IDEM inspection, biannual inspection, and all the results there were positive. So
I'll just add to that, which is through the end of October, so 10 months.
Yep.
Including the compost and leaves that we've already picked up and processed, it's almost 10,000 tons. It's going to be about on track with the same as last year, but it's an enormous amount of collection and processing and management of for community our size.
Could you refresh me? What did we do for the TSO optimization or upgrades this year? Have we started all those that we approved?
We're still in the planning stage for the plant. That's the last stage. There were 3 stages of this. One was the equipment.
Yes.
So all the equipment is done. The second one was the technology. That's been implemented at the transfer station and the scale operation.
The payment technology and scale.
Payment, as well as, hey, we're in 2024. We can actually get a printout of the weight that comes across the scale now, rather than manually handwriting everything. And then the third one are all the plan improvements. So we're going through the surveying, and then the evaluation and scope of work and bidding process. So that will probably not finish until the end of first quarter next year.
Okay.
The scope. Yeah.
I don't know if you'll know this or not, but do we know how much waste is being brought by out of city residents? Do we have those? Would we know that?
I can find out for you. We do separate out of
Trying to collect it
county.
better now through the POS system.
Yeah,
So that's a way to collect it because of, we're checking their location. So it'd be city, county, out of county.
right. Okay.
How are we verifying where
Residency.
people live, the residency of people? I've never
It's
had
the
my
old-fashioned way.
I've never had my ID checked when I drop off at the DSO, but
Yeah, I think they typically start by looking at the license plate, making sure it's a vehicle from the county. If not, they ask from there, are you an in-county or out-of-county resident?
So we're still working through the final elements of it, but it's on track and doing exactly what we intended it to do. And Chris is doing a very good job of managing that complicated operation with his staff.
Yep, and then lastly, a couple of current priorities that I had. You'll see the leaf vacs are out. We've got 2 leaf vacs going out each day now, trying to make sure that we're doing a good job getting the leaves up out of the community, and then also focusing on storm drains, especially here in the downtown area, down towards the riverfront, but all over the city, and working to improve our storm drain situation.
do we have any tentative scheduling for certain areas for the leaf vacs?
So right now, they've just been splitting up and running the routes. So we are asking residents are free to call in if they have a particular spot, and then we can work on communicating the.
I know it's something that in the past, it's always been questioned. You never know when the leaf vac's gonna come to pick up all the leaves you raked up.
Yeah, and then I also find it has an effect where you see a lot of people pick the leaves up right behind the leaf vac. Right, you hear one person mowing, someone else starts mowing, and we tend to see that as the leaf vac goes by, people will remember that, I'll put my leaves out, and so we do a lot of circling back. Right?
But it would be nice if there would be somewhat of a schedule, like we're gonna be on the Hilltop on Monday and Tuesday of this week. We're gonna be downtown on Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay, yeah, I'll work on seeing if we can improve that communication.
And people are always free to use compost bags, and we pick those up every week.
Yep, correct.
I just have one question. I know that it's been mentioned to us in the past that at the TSO, our pile, I'll call it, of compost is quite large. I would love it if you could come up with a solution of,
Done.
Yeah, so.
Seriously?
They are in the middle of moving out the mulched pile of compost, which is to the west. We're working with a company to move that out now, and then developing opportunities in the future for what we can do with that to better utilize it as a resource.
Are we paying to have it removed, or is it a?
That's what I was going to say too. Are we paying someone to get rid of it, or are we like, hey, take this and go make your own mulch?
No, unfortunately, we were only able to get rid of so much of it without paying to have it moved. So we are paying to truck it. We're not paying someone to take it necessarily.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
We've really worked hard on that, and it's a mountain of compost if you've not been back there. And we've got a really good deal now of removing what's been mulched. And again, part of also this is about management too, which is not taking, compost from people that don't live in the county. Let's stop the problem for one, and that's helping. And then also, as Chris is managing it, to remove it, and then also in the
To make a
future,
plan for the future.
find
That's
a-
my
To make
big
sure it
thing.
doesn't end up back in the
Like
same
that
place.
again.
It'd be
Okay.
great if we could use it as a byproduct for something and actually have some value to it.
Yeah, it
Because
would.
it is expensive to manage, move around, mulch, remove, store, report on. It's a lot to manage there. It's a mountain of stuff.
All right, I appreciate your time. Please make sure to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. And then lastly, I should say hi to Morgan and Grayson, my kids at home.
Are they watching you on TV
Yeah,
tonight?
yeah, they're
All right.
watching, and hi Danielle. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Chris.
I love it. Well, thank you for both of those reports. We do not have any bills on second reading, so we'll, before I move into the mayor's comments, I will ask the public if there's anybody here who would like to address council in the mayor's office. Please come to the podium, name and address, please, and your remarks. Not seeing anybody move toward the podium, I will call your attention to this poster that's in front of Councilwoman Krebs that says, congratulations to the national champions of 1984. I didn't know if everybody knew. Didn't know if everybody knew that we have an All-American in front of us who is also a national women's basketball champion for the Central Missouri State University in 1984, who just celebrated their 40th anniversary. Yes, absolutely. And if anybody is going to a basketball game, there is a giant picture of Carla Eads there with her shot. So congratulations on the 40th anniversary there, Carla. We had a great election yesterday from standpoint of processes. I want to thank everybody that was either on the ballot, but also everyone who worked in the 15 plus polling locations. It was an enormous feat, so it took a lot of work. Our clerk, Tabitha Evelyn, did a great job, as well as all the volunteers and poll workers. We will have the John Minke Award at the next council meeting, November the 19th. That's always a special night. We're also starting the celebrations for Veterans Day. You'll see some things around the community this weekend, Sunday, Monday, Veterans Day programs. Please join the community in many of those. Tomorrow we're having the ribbon cutting for the Ohio River Legacy Park at 11:30 down on the riverfront. You've probably seen that the park is finished, and we will be unveiling the bust of George D. Baptiste along with the sharing of the history of the themes of that. Our open house begins Friday on Main Street. So go shop, spend your money locally. And I want to give a couple of shout outs to the Port Authority. Just received a $5.4 million grant for the replacement of the last 1888 steel truss bridge that is part of our rail line. And I think that is over Muscatatuck. Major investment. We did the Graham Creek Bridge a couple years ago. That was also a major investment. In fact, Chris's mother, Kathy Hale, managed the railroad for decades. So Chris always had a connection to the city of Madison, and he didn't know it as a little boy that he'd end up being working for the city of Madison now. So we're glad to have him. And then lastly, I'll mention too is our tree board received a grant that we're working through that process with them to plant a lot of new trees in several areas of the city. So we're working through the tree plan with them. So, and thank you so much, Karen. Karen Skillman is here. She is a member of our tree board. And we've probably planted, I think, about 250 trees in the last few years. And this one's going to add how many? Karen, do you remember? 50 more trees in certain areas based on the tree board's review of the plan, and it's a DNR grant. So a lot happening. Halloween was fantastic. Mad Hop was great. Our next meeting is Tuesday, November the 19th. We still have a lot of good and interesting things to talk about before our year concludes in just the next 3 meetings. So, council, anything to add for the cause? Awesome things. Where's the status of the trolleys? Soon?
Sooner. Next week.
Oh my gosh.
The first one arrives next week.
Cannot wait to see our very own Lucy DeCillo driving people around in the trolley, because it will happen. Thanks for a great meeting tonight. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody not want to go home? All right, thank you. Thanks, Joe.